and welcome into Making Sense. You know, we're into the brand new year, 2017, brand new president, brand new administration, and some of the campaign promises we want to find out, is it going to help? Do American people have more in their pockets? And to find out about what's in the pocket, Brandt McDonald, McDonald Hagen Wealth Management. And Brandt, you know, our viewers are saying, okay, the president promised that this is going to happen, that the American people will have more money. Obviously, the big 100-pound or 800-pound gorilla in the room is usually tax.
Right.
And that's what that's the equalizer in all things.
You know, taxes and tax rates is sort of like a governor on a go-kart. You know, the higher that the tax rate is, the slower the go-kart's going to go. And that's sort of analogous to what I think we're talking about here. And the U.S. Has one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world at 35%. So yes, Trump has promised that he wants to reform the corporate tax code as well as the individual tax code. It's interesting to me as I talk with a number of my contacts around the country and some of these folks that we're connected to in Washington, it's clearly apparent to me that Trump really wants to pull something off like Reagan did. He wants to be able to prove as a leader that he's able to reach across the aisle and bring the two parties together. You know, there's a thing in Congress called the budget reconciliation, where you can get things done with a majority in the Senate. If you have 51 majority with 51, you can temporarily put tax code changes on the books. It'll last for 10 years. Trump's not interested in that. He wants 60 votes in the Senate. The only way you're going to get there is to marry two different things together. So what he's doing, he's been talking with Chuck Schumer. Schumer is a big advocate of infrastructure. He wants to see fiscal stimulus infrastructure bill passed, and a large one. They both want this, $1 trillion in size. If they can marry infrastructure with corporate tax reform, then I think, and Schumer's happy with it, I think he can bring another 8 senators alongside with him, and they can do a pretty grand bargain with a massive corporate tax reform, at least bringing the corporate tax rate down to probably around 20% and eliminating a lot of other deductions. This is significant, and I try to tell clients this all the time. Think about, you know, a company that has $1 million, let's say, in net income, and they're paying a full boat of 35% in corporate taxes, and it comes down to, let's just use 15 for easy math. That's a 20% savings. So net after-tax income roughly goes up to $1.2 million. A 20% year-over-year increase, just like that. That's a lot more capital for companies to invest in property, plant, and equipment, or new technologies,
or new people.
Or new people.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Training programs, etc. Let's also not forget that there's roughly $2.5 trillion in U.S. multinational corporate cash held outside the border that's never been taxed. So if they're allowed to bring a large portion of that back into the country at a substantially reduced rate, then connect the dots, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Where will this money go? So they'll use it to buy back some of their stock, they'll use it to increase dividends, and they'll use it to invest again in property, plant, and equipment.
And that becomes a win-win.
A huge win-win.
Right.
So when you look at valuations on the stock market, for example, the market has been going up since the election, and it's because it's beginning to discount what it sees coming in the way of corporate earnings. So in that example I used, you take $1 million net income that goes to 1.2. Assume they had 1 million shares outstanding and this company bought back, say, 20% of their stock. Now you have a 1.2 million in net income, 800,000 shares outstanding versus 1 million, and EPS, or earnings per share, went from $1 to $1.40. Now I'm using an extreme example, but suddenly all of the valuation metrics that you use to determine whether or not equity markets are fairly priced, they change dramatically. And that's why forward multiples, PE multiples, price to earnings, price to sales, price to book, all these different metrics are really quite elevated right now, but the market is discounting what it sees coming. Now in terms of individual tax rates, he is a major advocate of bringing all the rates down, and yes, even the top rate. Now the top rate would probably come to maybe 35, but he is a big believer in helping the middle class. He wants to do it, and I'll tell you why. Those are the people that gave him the election.
Right.
It's
right.
those blue states that he flipped in you know, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio,
yep,
Michigan, all these places. I like to say when I'm doing the radio show or other things or talking to clients, I like to say the election was won over the dinner table of those working class men and women who both spouses are working their tails off every day.
That's right.
And they couldn't, their incomes were not rising and they were struggling. And so they decided to give him a chance. And that's why he, I think, is so passionate about, you know, keeping these American manufacturers at home, you know, encouraging or fostering a business environment, creating the conditions around corporate tax and others that these companies would want to do business in America. And that's good for the American worker.
Absolutely. Thank you for this week's segment. We're going to get you to come back because I think some of our viewers want to know what can they do individually to make sure that they're going to be okay from a dollars and cents standpoint.
All right.
And we'll be right back right after this.